Well, good morning, Jagender Rana here. Ambition alone won't secure India's orbits. This is the topic of our discussion today. Ambition alone won't secure India's orbits. Limited launch capacity, slipping timelines, and rising dependence on foreign rockets rebel. A widening gap between India's space goals and its ability to deliver them. At the start of 2025, DOS and ISRO appeared poised for momentum. The leadership transition had been managed without visible disruption. The mission manifesto looked crowded, and the institutional confidence of an organization shaped by 6 decades of calibrated risk taking seemed intact. But as 2026 begins, that promise remains only partially realized. This is not to suggest success was purely elusive, but measured against what was planned and publicly articulated. The gap between expectations and executions continues to demand scrutiny. Key missions have slipped, timeliness have stressed, and failures, both partial and complete, have intruded on a period meant to signal readiness for scale. ISRO and DOS must knuckle down and not let 2026 be another year of underperformance. Consider that China recently launched 3 missions within a span of just 19 hours. The results are demonstrated in orbit refueling between satellites, a capability that even US has yet to operationalize at scale. India, by contrast, managed 5 launches across the year, just concluded. 3 succeeded, 1 failed during ascent. Another reached orbit only for the mission to unravel due to the failure. A critical spacecraft fall. So this central constant remains unchanged. India's space ambitions are expanding far faster than its launch infra can support. A slow projection of 50 orbital launches annually by 2029 sounds bold, but the agency has never completed even 10 launches in a calendar year. Manufacturing constraints, insufficient launch facilities, and limited payload capacity persist despite optimistic public statements. The LVMs can carry about 8,000 kg to low Earth orbit. This limitation has forced reliance on international launches for heavier satellites and contributed to critical infra gaps, including an incomplete and underperforming NAVICs. This capacity gap is now shaping private sector choices. Despite policy reform and rhetoric about nurturing domestic launch providers, Indian startups continue to look overseas. Dignatra, Pixel, and XD Links have all launched aboard SpaceX rockets. SpaceX has, in single year, launched as many missions as ISRO has since its inception, if not more. When domestic launch slots are scarce and unpredictable commercial timeline draft abroad, until launch availability improves, policy intent alone will not anchor private demand at home. Meanwhile, national objectives have expanded. A space station and a crewed lunar mission are targeted for 2040, and 2026 will be a critical year with the Gaganyaan timelines that slipped into 2025. Expected to be expedited, yet the semi-cryogenic upgrade for LVM-3 continue to slip, pushing schedules to the right and forcing compromise such as suboptimal satellite orbits that shorten operational lifespans. So China's approach of deploying multiple launcher families and Operating several launch sites offers pragmatic model. The next generation launch vehicle could mark a breakthrough for India, but constant budgets and extended timeline pose clear risks. Plus, India operates fewer than a dozen defense satellites. China and US field hundreds. NavIC remains only partially functional. Of 44 Earth observations satellites launched historically, just 21 remains active. So ISRO's own projections call for nearly 60 EO satellites within 5 years, with military requirement pushing the total past 100. Current launch capacity marks this improbably. China maintains continuous surveillance over contested waters through overlaps constellations. India relies on fragmentary coverage with persistence gaps. So in modern conflict, this amount to operating blind. Note, India spends under $2 billion annually on space. China spends roughly 8 times more. NASA commands over 10 times. India's allocation, even where Indian rockets are competitive on cost, low launch frequency, and long turnaround times blunt that advantage. So that's why 2025 produced a wide mix of technological, scientific, and institutional outcomes. Space DX, launched in December 2024, demonstrated autonomous docking, undocking, circumnavigation, and in-orbit power transfer between two satellites. So human spaceflight preparedness or preparations also progressed, even as the program itself remains significantly delayed. Integrated airdrop tests of Gaganyaan were completed. Space analog missions were conducted in Ladakh, and India's first astronaut to ISS, Subhanshu Shukla, marked an important milestone. So ISRO marked its 100th mission from Sriharikota with GSLV F-15 NVS-02. Though the satellites failed due to a spacecraft board issue, LVM-3 M3 succeeded and demonstrated the in-space restart of the C-25 cryogenic stage. The NISAR satellites launched with NASA added substance to Indo-US cooperation. Beyond launches, ISRO completed hot tests of the semi-cryogenic engine power, had a 1,000-hour live test of electric plasma thrusters. On December 30, it carried out a static ground test of an improved version of the third stage of SSLV. So Aditya L1 data releases space-based wheat production forecasting, plant growth and experiments under crops, and the discovery of a new exponent by PRL were welcome. Institutionally, the cabinet approved the third launch pad. Groundwork continued at Kulaskapattinam, and initiatives spanning academia, disaster management and space diplomacy were rolled out. But a global orbital contest is already underway, and it's about the securing orbital infra, protecting data flows, and ensuring uninterrupted defense, economic and governance service. So the requirement is clear. Until launch capacity, cadence and funding align with ambition, India's space program will continue to promise more than it can deliver. Thank you. Thank you very much.